Want the public to see the underlying facts.
This president refuses to put people's lives at risk and play politics with national security, and that's what the Democrats are doing here.
All eyes in the money world on Wall Street, where in just a couple of hours the market's set to reopen.
So what can we expect?
I think we're in for another rough ride. That doesn't mean to say there's a big sell-off. I do mean to say up and down like this.
A dreamer who supports President Trump and has a tough message for Nancy Pelosi.
The Dems failed to act back in 2008, back in 2011. The president is taking leadership on this issue.
The video will give you chills. A student choir fills an entire hotel. The sounds of our national anthem.
Okay, so a guy walks out of his hotel room and he realized that there were choirs that were staying in his hotel, and that's the Kentucky Music Educators Association All-State Choir. They were singing our national anthem. Brought many to tears. They are going to be with us live at the conclusion of this hour because that video taken right there went viral over the weekend.
I mean, you heard a little clip of it and before we went to break. Unbelievable. Beautiful voices.
All right. Meanwhile, at 2 minutes after the top of the hour, let's talk about what's going to be taking place as early as today. There's going to be freewheeling debate on some type of DACA fix. That's what they're going to start with, not comprehensive immigration reform. That's too big. It never works. They're going to talk about phase one, and phase one is going to include DACA, people brought here as youngsters against their will, perhaps, and now part of society, a pathway to citizenship. The president says, I'm okay with that. It takes about 10 years. Don't break any rules. Get a job. You should be fine. And then he says the nuclear family does not become citizens. They're going to debate all these things because they came here illegally. They're also going to debate lottery, the getting rid of the lottery, as well as chain migration. The question is, what are the Democrats going to give back for that? And it has a lot to do with border security.
Right. They want DACA, but they say, okay, $25 billion, that's for border security, that might be doable if it's one for one. But the president wants three things. The Democrats want one thing. It is a high bar for the Democrats to cross this.
That's right. So we interviewed Hogan Gidley earlier, Deputy White House Press Secretary, about the importance of the immigration plan, the president's immigration plan and the framework. Listen to this.
Everything in the president's framework is laid out in this bill, and it's not just a lasting solution for DACA. It is the things you mentioned. You have to build a wall, and the secret is walls work, but you also have to end chain migration. You have to end the visa lottery, and you have to close those loopholes and give those Border Patrol agents the means and methods necessary to protect this nation. That's what the president's going to do, and that's what the Senate Republicans have in their bill.
Senator Mitch McConnell came to the floor. He's coming to the floor today in the Senate, and he's saying normally we come in, since we're the majority party, with whoever the majority party is usually comes in with everything already attached to the bill. Well, he's coming to the Senate floor and saying this is a shell of the bill. You guys fill it with what you think is important, and let's do it the old-fashioned way. Let's debate this, because I'm fulfilling a promise that I gave the Democrats in January when they allowed the budget bill to go through.
Among the people who think it's going to work is Senator Jeff Flake, who is usually the president's biggest critic. He says the president really helped the debate by laying out the four things that he wants. He no longer point to the White House and say we're a little confused. Now what Speaker Ryan has said all along, I got to get something that the president will sign. And he believes the House is going to demand the Speaker take that Goodlatte bill and push it right to the Senate, especially after what they thought they were ignored the Freedom Caucus was in the whole budget debate. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and the big question is whether or not they can get to 60. They've got to have 60 in the U.S. Senate. Also, and there are only 51 Republicans. Also, it's got to pass the House, and the House doesn't like, something mushy in the middle. They want, obviously, what the president wants in large measure, and then ultimately the president has got to like it. And when Hogan was on with us, we asked him the hypothetical. If the four parts weren't in there, would he sign it? And he said, essentially stay tuned. We'll see.
All right, at the end of last week, we were wondering if this Democrat memo, the rebuttal to the Republican memo, was going to be released. If you're just waking up and you didn't turn on the news over the weekend, we're here to tell you that that Democratic memo has not yet been released. The president says there's so many things that need to be redacted in there for national security purposes. He can't release it right now because it would affect, there's so many secrets in there, sensitive information.
Is so personal between the ranking member as well as the chairman. Here's an example. Devin Nunes says, yeah, I put out the first memo. I looked at this one. It's not going to pass. Everybody knows it. That's why it was put out. Adam Schiff comes back and said, I told you they wouldn't do it, even though they voted unanimously in committee to do it. Let's listen.
Everything in the president's framework is laid out in this bill, and it's not just a lasting solution for DACA. It is the things you mentioned. You have to build a wall, and the secret is walls work, but you also have to end chain migration. You have to end the visa lottery, and you have to...
Okay, we're just kidding. That was the soundbite you already heard about immigration.
Right.
Now they're re-racking it. They have it ready for you. So this is Nunes. This is the Republican Nunes, who is the Republican who is the leader of the House Intel Committee. And then the response from the Democrat, Adam Schiff, Congressman Adam Schiff, who they were both on Sunday shows this morning. So I think we have it ready, right?
Well, you know what? We have it ready.
We have it ready now. Okay, go.
We actually want the Democratic memo out. We think it's ridiculous on the face of it. We think it's very political about how they attack myself. They attack Chairman Gowdy. They turn Carter Page into some super secret Russian spy. They talk about how Christopher Steele is a really, really good source when we know that he lied to the FBI. So we want this out. We don't know why they're not in this weekend redacting it so that we can get it back to the White House so the president can declassify it.
The president doesn't want the public to see the underlying facts. What is revealed in our memo are quotations from the very FISA application that really demonstrate just how misleading the Republicans have been. But the president doesn't want you to see these facts from the FISA application because it completely undermines his claim of vindication.
That is not accurate. It's not the president who said, essentially, I don't want people to see it. The president said, look, this is political and there's secrets here. It's the Department of Justice and the FBI. They reviewed it and they said, too many secrets here. You got to get rid of them. It sounds like the Democrats are going to sit down with their attorneys today and do some redacting and then put forward the memo for reconsideration. Ultimately, the president would have to declassify it.
If you want to keep your eye on something, keep an eye on the push to release the FISA warrant request. I want to see the debate that the judge, I want to hear what the judge heard when he, for 4 times, he said, okay, spy on Carter Page, and who knows who else. So we'll get away from this conjecture. We'll get away from any editorializing and any memo. I don't care what your party is. I want to see what the judge saw. And I'm just wondering if John Brennan was indeed correct when he was CIA director, when he said the dossier was not used to target anybody on the Trump campaign.
There's an item out by Paul Sperry, the investigative reporter, that suggests that perhaps the former director of the FBI, that man right there, John Brennan, he could actually, CIA, he could actually be in perjury trouble because when he appeared in, public last year, he said essentially the dossier played no role in promoting ultimately the FISA application, and he also said, I have no idea who paid for it. Dan Bongino was with us about 90 minutes ago, and he said, that guy right there who used to be at the CIA, he might be in really big trouble now.
Brennan says, oh, I didn't know who commissioned the dossier, which is amazing because the CIA has a central role in the verification of foreign assets and information we get from foreign assets. It is not plausibly deniable that John Brennan did not know who commissioned that dossier. He is in a world of trouble because he raised his right hand and he said the exact opposite.
And I'd just like to know, too, how this might play into other FISA requests. And the FISA court in particular that was expanded after 2001, the 9/11 attacks, and you just say, okay, anything you do to stop the next attack, fine. But if you're doing that for political purposes to unmask people, like, for example, I'm not accusing, but Samantha Power had dozens of requests to unmask. How did you go about doing that? What was your case that you brought forward as UN Secretary in New York City?
Well, if you're the judge on the FISA court and you get the dirty dossier and you say, okay, all right, should we spy on the Trump campaign? Where'd you get this information? Who gave it to you? From where did it come?
But
Those
Ainsley,
would be the questions.
you're not looking at this footnote. It simply says it was political in nature, but doesn't say that Hillary Clinton or the Democrats paid for it.
Political in nature. If I read that, if I'm the judge and it says political in nature, wouldn't you say,
I would raise my hand and say,
hold on,
excuse me,
I have some
explain that.
questions.
By the way, they say it's against the law to present anything that's not verified and 100% correct to a FISA judge. That is part of the concept and why there's no defense attorney to defend that would-be person.
All right, so if it's illegal, we need to find out who released that information, and they need to get in trouble.
Speak about somebody that never breaks the law, as far as we know, Jillian Mealy.
Never.
Right.
Ever. Never had a speeding ticket or multiple.
Right,
Never.
there you go. We're going to do a background check on
Okay,
you.
sounds good.
You're on probation until we look.
Okay. Good morning, guys. Let's get you caught up on some breaking news right now. Starting with this Fox News alert. The second in command of the Pakistani Taliban is dead following U.S. drone strikes. The terrorist organization says Khalid Masood was killed at a former stronghold near the Afghan border. The successful strike further weakens the Taliban, already being forced to fall back by the Pakistani military. Masood had been on the U.S. terrorist list since 2014. We now know the victims of the fiery helicopter crash in the Grand Canyon, killing 3 people and injuring 4 others. All 6 passengers are from the United Kingdom, and the pilot, 42-year-old American Scott Booth, surviving but in critical condition. Here you can see a crash survivor running away from the chopper, a witness describing her as badly injured with severe burns, saying she was screaming for Jason, which is the name of one of the men who died in the wreck. It's still unclear what caused the fatal crash that took off from Nevada. The NTSB is investigating. Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, says there is no reason not to believe those accusing former White House aide Rob Porter of domestic abuse. This as the White House says Chief of Staff John Kelly's job is safe despite questions over his handling of the scandal.
I think all the stories about replacing General Kelly are mostly being fed by people who are unhappy that they've lost access to the president.
I spoke to the president last night. I told him I'd be with you today, and he said, please tell Jake that I have full faith in Chief of Staff John Kelly.
Conway setting the record straight after reports that he's on the outs. 2 women shining for America at the Winter Olympics in South Korea. Jamie Anderson earning a gold medal in the women's snowboarding slopestyle, celebrating the win, wrapping herself with an American flag. She also won gold in the same event at the Sochi Games back in 2014. And figure skater Mirai Nagasu becoming the first American woman to land a triple axel in Olympic competition. Team USA currently tied with the Netherlands in the gold medal count with 2. Germany has 3. Guys.
It's not over yet.
But it's not over, no.
Norway has 8 medals. Norway's leading.
Well, listen, we're going to catch up. All right?
So we won 1 in snowboarding. The other one was ice skating?
I think so.
Right.
Okay.
Triple axel. Very impressive.
It's
Thank
hard
you,
to know
Jillian.
what's live and what's not live. Some things are only
I
10
know.
minutes in delay. It's
I
so
know.
bizarre.
When I get ready in the morning, I'm glad that they replay it. But I'm like, is this live? Is it not live? I don't know.
You got to figure it happened yesterday.
Okay, 12 minutes after the top of the hour. Coming up, some conservatives are upset after last week's costly budget deal. Now Congressman Jim Jordan says he has concerns about House Speaker Paul Ryan.
I think there are big concerns because he just presided over one of the biggest spending increases in the history of this country at a time when we were elected to do just the opposite.
Coming up next, we're going to talk to House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. He joins us live from D.C. next.
And the media cannot stop gushing over Kim Jong-un's sister at the Olympics. Look at her. Can't help but gush, right? Even calling her the Ivanka Trump of North Korea. Have they forgotten what the rogue nation is doing to their own people and making nuclear weapons? I haven't.
The president out this morning with a tweet urging Congress to help him repair our bridges and tunnels. The president tweeting, quote, "This will be a big week for infrastructure. After so stupidly spending $7 trillion in the Middle East, it is now time to start investing in our country." Here to react, the House Majority Whip, Steve Scalise from down home in New Orleans. Steve, good morning to you.
Morning. Good to be with you, Steve.
Okay, Congressman, so the president's suggestion on infrastructure, $1.5 trillion, that's a lot of money that would fix a lot of stuff, but there's some people who are saying, where's that money going to come from?
Well, that's something that we've all been looking at for a long time, knowing that when the infrastructure package starts getting put together, there's going to have to be a way to pay for it. And it's got to have reforms, too. And the president's talked about this so that we can reform the permitting process. There is no reason why it should take 10 years to get a permit to build some of these projects. It jacks up the cost of road projects. By shortening the permit process, you actually save a lot of money, billions of dollars, on some of these big projects, too.
Sure. Of course, one of the big things that got passed last week was the budget. And you've heard from a lot of your constituents down there saying, hey, listen, you know, there's a lot of out-of-control spending in Washington, D.C., and they're disappointed that the Republicans went along with all that crazy spending.
You know, it's taken years to get a budget agreement, and that's what we ultimately got. But the main thing we've been focused on is trying to increase our defense spending to properly make sure that our men and women in uniform have the tools they need. And frankly, they have not had those tools that they've needed. Our generals have told us that. Our commander-in-chief, President Trump, has said that, too. And he's said making sure that we properly fund defense is a top priority. And for years, we haven't been able to get that agreement. We finally did. At least this gives real certainty to our defense and our men and women in uniform. Let's make sure that they've got the things they need to be not only protecting our country, but safe when they're training in their missions.
Sure, the Freedom Caucus, not crazy about all the money spent, but they did like the military money. Jim Jordan, the congressman, said this about the speaker. Listen to this.
You asked me if there's concerns with the speaker. I think there are big concerns because he just presided over one of the biggest spending increases in the history of this country at a time when we were elected to do just the opposite. Do I think the speaker has problems? Yes, I do, particularly now as we head into this big immigration debate.
So, Congressman, a lot of people are saying, wow, is Paul Ryan, should he be out if that's the kind of agenda he's presiding over?
Well, look, this is a deal that Speaker Ryan negotiated for years. We've passed bills in the House, and I know Jim Jordan supported them in the past to increase defense spending, but not on the non-defense discretionary side. We were passing that in the House for years. The Senate never went along with it, so we finally got an agreement with the Senate. But look, we have got to get control of mandatory spending. That is the driver of our debt. We need to focus on that and get control over mandatory spending quickly.
Okay. Steve Scalise is joining us today from New Orleans. Sir, thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
All right. Straight ahead, Hillary Clinton is trying to figure out what happened in 2016. One magazine has a suggestion for her. Move on! Is it finally time? Two Democrats here with the debate. Coming up next. We've got some quick Monday morning headlines for you. First up, if he survives, prosecutors want the death penalty for the man accused of killing 2 Ohio police officers. Quentin Smith in the hospital after being shot by police. He's accused of ambushing Westerville, Ohio officers Anthony Morelli and Eric Joering. We now know Smith was not even allowed to own a gun. The community coming together to mourn the officers at a prayer vigil last night. And the former Indianapolis Colts linebacker killed by a drunk driver who was in the country illegally will be laid to rest later today. Funeral services for Edwin Jackson will be held in his hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. The 26-year-old and his Uber driver were killed in Indiana on Super Bowl Sunday after being hit by Manuel Salava, who had been deported twice.
All right, now let's talk about North Korea, and let's not talk about South Korean Olympics. Let's talk about North Korea's role in these Olympics. For some reason, the South Koreans, in an effort to go for peace and pretend as if they haven't been in existence for the last 25 years, every time they have a major event, they host a major event, from the World Cup to past Olympics, there's an overture from the North to let's make peace, give peace a chance. And they use this as a PR plus, as if we're going to ignore the fact that they're starving their own people. They're a rogue regime that's trying to expedite their nuclear technology forward. Now the worst came to fruition. The American press is buying into it. I would contest, because this administration is hated so much by the American press, they're actually taking the side of Kim Jong-un's sister.
All right, this was New York Times headline. Kim Jong-un's sister turns on the charm, taking Pence's spotlight when they were sitting together at the Olympics.
Reuters said North Korea judged winner of diplomatic gold at Olympics.
And then Washington Post, the Ivanka Trump of North Korea captivates people in the South at the Olympics.
You know, they're simply failing to mention the fact that North Korea has had human rights abuses for decades. They censor people. Absolutely. They glorify public executions. Sean Parnell, a retired Army Ranger, watched some of this gushing over the weekend and had this observation in a great interview with Brian.
The first thing that I see is CNN's headline about this, Kim Jong-un's sister stealing the show at the Olympics, and I was absolutely shocked. And sure enough, one by one, all these other stories started popping up on Reuters, ABC News, NPR, praising one of the most evil and brutal dictatorships the world has ever known. They have gulags and concentration camps in North Korea that are larger than Los Angeles. They starve, they oppress their people, they subjugate their people.
And here's the thing. They're actually aiming their missiles, their rockets, at Guam. They threatened and sent them over our ally in Japan. We are spending tens of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, just to bring our naval presence back to that region, and we've been staying there. And now we're at the point where we have our vice president in this, I guess, this VIP booth to observe the opening ceremonies, and people are mad at the vice president for not turning around and shaking hands or sitting down during their national anthem. Why would we stand and salute this regime that's killed so many and have threatened us for so many years?
Well, you know, the headlines, they didn't want to talk about Trump. They wanted to talk about her. It is gushing. It is effusive. There is one thing that could be progress, however, between the North and the South, and that is the fact that apparently she, at the suggestion of her brother, the dictator pictured right there, she apparently did invite the president of South Korea to North Korea for talks. It is unclear whether or not the South Koreans realize it's probably just propaganda. They have not decided yet whether or not they will be in attendance.
Don't be surprised the South has already agreed on some level to some type of economic sanction relief, and they just want more time to continue with their missile program. That's all it is. We've seen this movie before.
Propaganda.
All right, coming up, the juice is loose in Hollywood. O.J. Simpson just landed a new gig.
And Hillary Clinton is trying to figure out what happened in 2016. One magazine has a suggestion for her. Move on. Is it finally time? Two Democrats here to debate it. Next.
This is your shot of the morning. More than 650 choir students waking up the hotel in Louisville with their beautiful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner.
And here's a live look at the Kentucky Music Educators Association. All state choir members singing at Lafayette School in Lexington, Kentucky. You'll get to watch them, a full heartwarming performance that'll be coming up only on Fox and Friends.
That's right. They're the singers that woke folks up. I think they started singing, was it 10 or 11 o'clock at night?
Isn't that
at that
beautiful?
Particular hotel?
Oh, so it was in the middle of the night? Everyone came out of their rooms to watch?
Yes, in fact, I think the fellow who took the images was from another nation, and he thought, oh, what is that? And he took the picture, and he said, I just had a great American moment.
It was hard to tell in that picture. Is the choir down, like, in the lobby area and everyone looking over?
It's one of those gigantic atriums.
Right, almost like a courtyard. Isn't a courtyard Marriott like that?
Yeah, they have the courtyard in the middle.
We're able to see everybody?
Suites. Maybe like a Radisson.
Embassy Suites.
A Ramada, maybe.
We're gonna give you the exact hotel a little later on, but right now she leaves the light on for us. That was the slogan for one of the motel sponsors.
Walking in, I just missed all of that, so I apologize, guys. Good morning to you. Good morning to you at home as well. Let's start you off with this story right now. A missing woman miraculously found alive in the woods after a 36-hour search. Rescue teams and hundreds of volunteers launching a desperate search to find 45-year-old Lisa Holman. A fire department using this drone to help in the Alabama thick terrain. You can see it right there. Holman's vehicle was found wrecked Friday, but they didn't find her until Sunday morning in the area. According to police, she had some broken bones. Holman's family saying in a statement her toughness helped her fight through her injuries and stay alive. And just a short time ago, President Trump tweeting his support for the mother of a 20-year-old man who died at the hands of the opioid crisis. Sue Krushik sending a Valentine's Day card to the president over the weekend in hopes of bringing more attention to the cause. She joined us in the last hour.
I'm just begging and pleading for help. This is the biggest epidemic our nation has ever faced.
The commander-in-chief responding, saying, quote, "Thank you to Sue, who lost her wonderful and talented son, Nick, to that opioid crisis, for your kind words while on Fox and Friends. We are fighting this terrible epidemic hard. Nick will not have died in vain." Filmmakers of the new Peter Rabbit movie are apologizing after facing major backlash.
Wait, didn't you try to eat me? Show me your teeth. Do like a go, like, It was you! I knew it! How are you? So good to see you.
So here's the deal. Parents are outraged over a scene they're calling allergy bullying. In the movie, Peter Rabbit's nemesis, Mr. McGregor, has a nephew who is allergic to blackberries. The rabbit's flinging the fruit at him, forcing him to have to use an EpiPen. In a joint statement with filmmakers, Sony Pictures says they are, in part, quote, "sincerely regret not being more aware and sensitive to this issue, and we truly apologize." Let's look at your headlines. Ainsley, I'll send it to you.
All right, thanks so much, Jillian. Hillary Clinton needs to move on. Well, that according to a new Politico magazine op-ed, which reads, quote, "We just passed Groundhog Day on the calendar, but it feels like we're still living it. We can't break free from the gnashing and rehashing of the 2016 election. She has the chance to go down in history as much more than almost first woman president. It starts with changing the subject." So is it time? Here to debate is Tim Canova, who is challenging Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz down in Florida for the 23rd Congressional District. And we have Hamza Khan of Pluralism Project. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us. Tim, I'll start with you. Do you think it's time for Hillary Clinton to move on?
Well, I think after every presidential election, it's a healthy thing for the candidate who loses. Traditionally, that candidate goes through a period of introspection and really reinvention. We've seen other candidates do that, Al Gore, even going back to Richard Nixon. And I think it's a healthy thing for the party. It opens up a space where the party can consider other policies and strategies and even personnel to promote. What makes it different this time is really how very divided the Democratic Party is. And a lot of that is a lingering hostility towards the Clinton campaign and the allegations of rigging the primary. That goes back to Donna Brazile and WikiLeaks and even a DNC fraud lawsuit. And it's very difficult for a big part of the party to move on as long as we keep rehashing this without kind of a reckoning. And just to give you one example, right here in Broward County where I am, we tried to verify the vote in our past election, and the supervisor of elections ended up destroying the ballots. We're still waiting for the Florida Democratic Party and the local Broward Democratic Party to speak out about this and do something. And it's very tough to move the party in that kind of a direction when, the lead candidate hasn't even moved on from this. There's more I could say about the ballot destruction. If folks are interested, they could go to our website at timcanova.com.
Hamza, what do you think? Do you think she needs to move on? Is it time?
Well, this has been an interesting election cycle, and it's also been an interesting time in American politics. Here we have former governor of Massachusetts, Mitt Romney, a Republican, running for Senate in Utah. We have Newt Gingrich as a top advisor to the current White House administration. We have President Barack Obama setting up a foundation that's getting very involved in local elections across the country. And we have Vice President Joe Biden going on a nationwide tour about America's promise. So the old adage that in American public life there isn't a second act doesn't seem to be holding true anymore. President Donald Trump has run for office himself in the past. He's tried to become the nominee for his party as running for president for the United States several times.
Are you
now
saying
he's back in the game now.
You think it'd be okay? Would Hillary Clinton be on the ballot in 2020 to run for president again?
I don't know if Secretary Clinton is interested in running for president again, but her role right now is being a stateswoman leading our country from behind the scenes, and she's inspired so many amazing people to run for office across this country. Just this morning, the Pluralism Project is proud to endorse a couple of those candidates for Congress across the country, including Fairouz Saad, Kia Hamadanchi, and a few others, Neil Muhammad in Illinois. This is a great time to be an American, and frankly, Hillary Clinton's helped bring about a healing in our country that we haven't seen before. She's been exemplary when it comes to helping the civil transition from one administration to another, both from the Obama administration to the Trump administration, and previously from her husband's administration, President Clinton's administration, to President Bush Jr.'s administration. So we should be proud of the role she's been playing in American public life. And frankly, I don't think there's anything wrong with her staying involved in any way she feels like it. It's a part of democracy.
Well, how can she retain her power in Democratic circles without becoming the target for Republicans? Tim, I'll start with you.
Well, I think that's a very good question and a very tough thing. She will remain the target, and it'll continue to be a rehash of what happened in 2016 at a time when the Democrats have to rebuild and figure out how they're going to come back. You know, unfortunately, failure has been rewarded in the Democratic Party, and it goes well before 2016. When you take a look at the huge defeats that the Democrats suffered in the midterm elections of 2010 and 2014, this party's in the weakest position that we've been in since 1920.
I have to disagree with you there, Tim. Tim, I appreciate that you're running for Congress.
Those are facts. No, Tim, we'll give you the last word.
I appreciate that you're running for Congress here and you're trying to build your own reputation in order to take on DWS. But let me point out something to you right now. The United States is doing fantastic when it comes to Democratic involvement, mostly because Democrats are running across the country up and down ballot. And we have the strongest chance yet to take back Congress, thanks to the work that Hillary Rodham Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden have done to build us going forward this coming election cycle. So I don't think you're right about any of this right now, Tim.
That's a lot of happy talk when you take a look at the situation.
Well, when you lose to DWS this year, we'll know if it's happy talk or not.
Well, may I finish? You know, the Democrats are in the weakest position in the House.
You can keep saying that, but we're doing fantastic when it comes to our House races nationwide.
Well, I'm rooting for the Democrats, and I'm working hard.
Well, then maybe you should stop trying to take down our former leader. I'm just pointing this out to you.
I'm not trying to take down the former leader.
It seems like you're desperate just to take on somebody.
All right, we'll leave it there. Tim, Hamza, thank you so much. All right, forget keeping murderers and drug dealers out. Environmentalists are more worried about this butterfly, and they are using it to try and stop the president's wall. Chris Kobach helped draft the president's immigration policy, and he is live next. Plus, the juice is loose in Hollywood. O.J. Simpson just landed a new gig.
We're going to wave?